Alexa?
Yes, yes.
Oh, now it's better. I can hear in the...
A lot better. Thank you so
Excellent.
much.
Thanks to Mark. So I will get the green light and we'll start. Yeah, they can. Take it later. We are now ready to begin the Education During COVID-19 and Beyond, the Global Education Coalition in Action meeting. We encourage you to use the Q&A button to ask questions or make comments. These questions and comments will be reviewed by UNESCO and, when appropriate, shared with the external audience. We will make an effort to bring your ideas into our discussion. We kindly ask that you specify your name, country, and any organization affiliation when using the Q&A function. Anonymous questions and comments will not be considered. We will have interpretation into English, French, and Spanish. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to the Education During COVID-19 and Beyond, the Global Education Coalition in Action meeting. Today, as the world is experiencing an unprecedented disruption of education, the meeting will focus on actions, policies, and partnership, and how we can all contribute to addressing these challenges. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the opening segment of this event will feature a rich array of high-level speakers. We'll firstly hear from the Director General of UNESCO, Madame Audrey Azoulay. We'll also hear a special address by Her Excellency, the President of Ethiopia, Ms. Saleh Work Zewde. We'll then also hear a special address from His Excellency Tulepa Ayono Saileli Malilegwai, Prime Minister of Samoa. Without delay, we'll now hear the video message from the Director General.
Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, as we gather for the 75th United Nations General Assembly, the world faces a serious crisis for education, perhaps the most serious since 1945. In April, 1.6 billion learners, that is to say 91% of the global student population, were affected by school and university closures. This unprecedented situation disrupted learning and amplified educational divides, especially for the most vulnerable. First of all, the virus exacerbated social inequalities, especially in the 40% of the poorest countries that were unable to roll out specific measures to address school closures. It also revealed gender inequalities at a time when, according to our estimates, 11 million girls may never return to school. Lastly, digital inequalities amplified these divides. Unsurprisingly, given that 43% of global learners and 82% of learners in sub-Saharan Africa lack internet access at home. Faced with such a far-reaching crisis, our responses take on different forms. The UN Secretary-General's policy brief on education provides a full overview of the situation, and I'd like to thank all the UN agencies that worked with us to write it. Of course, in the short term, responding to the crisis meant addressing its immediate consequences and moving from shock to action. That's why UNESCO launched the Global Education Coalition last March. The coalition now has more than 150 partners, many from the private sector that I would like to thank. And because of this agile format, we've been able to quickly implement concrete actions tailored to each local situation. The coalition has rolled out initiatives in over 70 countries, benefiting 400 million learners and 13 million teachers in order to ensure the continuity of education. For example, in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the coalition is developing educational radio content for more than 4 million learners. Or in Argentina, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, and Spain, it is working to ensure that teachers and learners can access online educational content free of charge. Many other examples of the coalition's work will be presented today. Now, we have to make sure wherever possible that schools will reopen, because schools are more than just places of learning. They are places where students receive protection and food. Lockdowns deprived 370 million children of school meals, which sometimes was their only meal of the day. Yet half of all the world's learners are still not attending class, and 24 million may never return to school. That's why we have worked with the World Bank, UNICEF, and the World Food Programme to develop a guide to reopen schools for the stakeholders in education. In addition, with the World Health Organization, we have published health recommendations covering this sensitive issue. That is also why the coalition has launched a major back-to-school campaign targeting girls in particular, but aimed at all children.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the medium term, reopening schools will not be enough. We must also invest more and better in education, because here also we are at a turning point. If we do nothing, the education funding gap will reach $200 billion per year, 60% of the amount needed to achieve the goal of quality education for all. What the crisis has clearly revealed is the cultural and social role played by schools. For these reasons, education budgets should be considered as an investment and not an expense. With 10 years to go to reach the goals of the 2030 agenda, reinvesting in education is not a choice but a necessity. The Global Education Meeting, which UNESCO will organize together with the United Kingdom on the 22nd of October, will be crucial in this respect, bringing together heads of states and government, UN agencies, private sector's representatives, the education community, and young people. It will aim at developing a tangible action plan for education. Looking further ahead, COVID-19 has made it necessary to think about the futures of education for 2050 and beyond. Anticipating this need, we launched the Commission on the Futures of Education last year at the 74th United Nations General Assembly. Over the past year, this Commission has carried out far-reaching work, building on the collective intelligence of the education community and citizens, and drawing on the expertise of our 200 UNESCO chairs. I would like to thank very especially the Commission's chairperson, the President of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, Her Excellency Sahle-Work Zewde. To support these reflections, the Commission can count on the lessons learned by the Coalition as it works in the field. Repairing the present while preparing for the future, these are the twin tasks that we are tackling today. Our efforts are crucial if we are to achieve the deceptively simple goal contained in Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everyone has the right to education. I thank you.
Merci à Madame la Directrice Générale.
Thank the Director General of UNESCO, Audrey Azoulay.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the honor and the pleasure to have with us Her Excellency, the President of Ethiopia, Ms. Sahle-Work Zewde. Her Excellency is a champion in advocating for education. She is the chair of the International Commission on the Future of Education. And we are very delighted that she's joining us today. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Madame la Directrice Générale de l'UNESCO,
Madam Director General of UNESCO.
the global health pandemic has shed light to the already existing education crisis, which has been exacerbated by COVID-19. It has provided a clearer picture of what steps forward we need to take. Chief among them, addressing the education of more than 1.6 billion students whose learning was disrupted due to school closures. Let us not forget that we already have 260 million children who are out of school who were out of school before COVID-19. The impact has been more severe in the global south and on the most vulnerable among us, such as low-income people who do not have the resources to survive lockdowns, on women who have faced increasing gender-based violence, children, especially girls, who may never return to school even after the pandemic is over. The digital divide in Africa, where only 11% of learners have a household computer, and only 18% have household internet as compared to 50% and 57% at the global level, demonstrates the magnitude of the challenge. Transitioning to remote learning has been difficult for most of the world, but especially for countries such as mine, given the inadequate technological infrastructures in our education system. More than 26 million students were out of school, and online learning is not an option for more than 90% of these students. That is why the Ministry of Education of Ethiopia has developed an education sector COVID-19 preparedness response plan, outlining how learning can be maintained during and after the pandemic. The core strategy of the response plan is utilizing different digital platforms, including education, to ensure public school students still have access to learning, even though they do not have access to internet. In Ethiopia, as is the case in many African countries, the closure of schools also has far-reaching effects on school children beyond learning. It hampers the provision of essential services to children, so our response plan includes school feeding for vulnerable children. There is no guarantee, especially for girls in rural areas, that they will return to schools when they reopen. According to UNFPA estimates, COVID-19 pandemic might result in an additional 13 million child marriages globally in the next decade as families struggle to maintain their livelihoods. To tackle this, the plan includes community and media awareness campaigns to ensure students stay connected to learning as much as possible and come back to school when it reopens. The continuity of education is vital for children's intellectual and social development, which is why the safe reopening of schools is of paramount importance and must be prioritized as we rethink the future of education in the age of COVID and beyond. An independent international commission on the futures of education that I have the honor to chair was launched last year in New York to develop a global report on how education should be rethought in a 21st century of increasing complexity, social disruption, and rapid technological innovation. Education has transformed the lives of people by leading them out of poverty to opportunity and advancement. There is a serious danger that this pandemic will threaten the gains we have made, especially in poverty alleviation, increasing access to education, and promoting gender equality as we continue the road to development. The members of the Commission are thought leaders from the worlds of politics, academia, civil society, business, and education. In response to the COVID-19 crisis, we produced a report entitled Education in a Post-COVID World, 9 Ideas for Public Action, which urged that as we navigate through this pandemic and its aftermath, we cannot forget core principles that education is a common good that must be preserved by protecting domestic and international financing for 21st century education infrastructures, especially in the developing world, which will require the mobilization of resources and support from developed countries. I'm particularly sensitive to the impact the crisis is having on the most vulnerable among us, especially women and girls. That is why the International Commission on the Futures of Education has adopted a humanistic approach that utilizes social justice, gender, youth empowerment, and technology lenses to revisioning education in light of the new reality. This global pandemic has intensified many of the challenges that we faced before. Inequality pervades us all. The uneven opportunities that divide people within and across nations existed and is in fact worsening. We have reached the time where we cannot ignore or hide it anymore. We have a greater chance now, more than ever, to decide together how we want the world to change. One-size-fits-all solutions will not work, so let us come up with pragmatic ones which are inclusive, accessible, and tailored to all of our communities. Let us harness our collective knowledge and technology to build bridges and leverage platforms to strengthen learning and understanding. Let us view this most challenging of times as an opportunity to redouble our efforts to envision a more flexible and innovative paradigm for the futures of education, which reflects our new reality post-COVID-19. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for these very important words that you kindly accepted to share with us today. Your message is well taken and will inform our discussion later in the panel that we will have. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, today we have also the honor to have a statement from His Excellency Toilepa Sailele Malelenga Oi, the Prime Minister of Samoa.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in the context of the current crisis, we have witnessed impressive creativity and a spirit of innovation and collaboration to ensure that learning never stops. In Samoa, we responded to the COVID-19 pandemic using diverse technologies, radio, TV, internet, and blended learning modalities. The coverage and effectiveness of remote educational responses, however, face many challenges. These include gaps in familiarity with technology, lack of practice in using technology, challenges in access to internet, high cost of technology and connectivity, gaps in parents' ability to support homeschooling for their children, and increased workload for mothers in particular. The continuity of education is important for children's overall well-being, health and safety. Schools should be prioritized among the first institutions to be opened as societies reopen, if this can be done safely. Virtual education can complement classroom education and can be a substitute only at the cost of decreased learning outcomes and psycho-socially challenged children. Children from lower income households are most at risk of exclusion when parents are stressed and the household is struggling. Children too bear the brunt. The school offers a safe space for children in such situations. Some of these issues prompted us to bring children back to school. In Samoa, we reopened our schools adhering to the guidelines from UNESCO, UNICEF, and World Health Organization. To help keep schools and communities safe, we are using a combination of strategies like limiting attendance numbers and some social distancing. Safe reopening also depends on the extent of community infection that makes students and staff more likely to infect others or be infected. We managed Samoa's borders from early on to prevent COVID-19 infection reaching Samoa. It was a difficult decision and fraught with challenges. However, each country has to make a decision on the most important safeguards for its context. We approved 18 million tala as special assistance to support education, including early childhood education, and 10 million tala for teachers. Education is an essential lever for an inclusive and sustainable recovery of all nations. Samoa will mobilize additional resources to build back more resilient, inclusive, and gender-responsive education systems, with emphasis on measures to support the learning continuity of the most marginalized. UNESCO's leadership was key in the mobilization of the United Nations and regional organizations, private sector, civil society, media, and academia to launch the Global Education Coalition, a multi-sectoral partnership to support countries develop adequate education responses to COVID-19. The coalition support for Samoa includes a tripartite among UNESCO, Ministry of Education, Sport and Culture, and Vodafone to provide learners free online access to education resources. Free data restricted to curated online learning sites and hosting of teaching and learning resources to enable simultaneous access by students in large numbers. The Global Partnership for Education supported in Samoa distance learning, teachers training, and education resources production through regional actions with the support of Moodle Foundation, Khan Academy, and LARC. The Global Coalition for Education is a good example of multilateralism and private sector stewardship coming together to leave no one behind. As a member state of UNESCO, we are pleased to have been part of this initiative. I thank you.
Thank you to the Prime Minister of Samoa. Dear colleagues, we have finished the opening segment, and we had the pleasure to have with us Director General of UNESCO, President of Ethiopia, Prime Minister of Samoa. We are moving to a second session, a conversation with the policy leaders, top managers, and thinkers about how the coalition works, what are the policy challenges that we are facing, what were the solutions, and how we move forward. For this, I have the pleasure to have a high-level panel with the participation of Madame Stefania Giannini, Assistant Director General for Education at UNESCO, Monsieur Mamadou Talla, Ministre de l'Éducation au Senegal, Mr. Martin Benavides Abanto, Minister of Education of Peru, Mrs. Magdalena Breyer Lopez Guerrero, Director General Pro Futuro, and Mr. Anthony Salcito, Vice President of Education, Microsoft Corporation. Let me start with Madame Stefania Giannini. Madame Giannini, we have heard about the Global Education Coalition in different interventions in the opening session. we would like, and we are eager to hear from you about how the coalition is working, what are the key initiatives, and what are the way forward that you are considering. Please, Madame Giannini, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Boren. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you are, and thanks for joining us today. Well, it's a great honor for me to take the torch somehow from our high-level speakers. And let me say that I think it's really timely that today we are featuring such a young coalition that has come on the scene as the UN marks its 75th anniversary. And I also believe that this coalition is a kind of paradigm, let me say like this, of the global solidarity and the renewed multilateralism that the UN has been advocating for day after day as the COVID-19 pandemic somehow spread out globally. And let me take one example just to go straight to the concrete action that I want to briefly describe in my presentation. Earlier this month, immediately after, in the aftermath of the blast in Beirut, UNESCO convened an emergency meeting of the Global Education Coalition to support the educational recovery in Beirut. You've heard that 160 more schools had been destroyed or damaged, heavily damaged, and the explosion affected over 85,000 students. Well, over 80 partners signed up at short notice, and a number of them stepped forward immediately to make concrete commitments and actions to help an education system already struggling to cope with the pandemic and prior pressures to be rehabilitated, to relieve. And I take this example because it really characterizes the spirit of the coalition. It's about being innovative. It's about an operational approach. Is about a pragmatic approach. I should say, if you allow me to say like this, it's a startup mood that somehow has disrupted our business as usual kind of partnership within the UN and beyond the UN. And the aim of this new exercise of partnership has been from the very beginning a very simple one: supporting member states to ensure learning continuity after schools closed from one day to the next. A big ambition, but to say that something happened and something is possible to do also in the coming months. New solutions had to be designed, of course, and deployed quickly, especially for those most at risk of being left behind. I don't go back to numbers and figures that our Director General has already mentioned, as well as the President of Ethiopia, Madam Saleh Work, and His Excellency's President, Prime Minister of Samoa. But I want to focus a bit in the time at my disposal which is the three pillars of action of the coalition. It's about country interventions, global flagship, and the data, knowledge, and advocacy track. Of course, it's far from replacing national responses. The coalition strengthens them by bringing on board a group, a mosaic of actors, diverse actors, to complement and support these efforts, leveraging on two key issues, innovation and creativity. I should say that today, coalition members are currently in 70 countries in all regions of the world, rallying around three flagships: achieving universal connectivity, valorizing teachers, and addressing the gender dimensions of the COVID-19 crisis. You can see some examples here of the diversity of interventions already put in practice, each adapted to context and demand. They range from expanded access to distance learning platforms. It's about training teachers to develop and use these platforms. It's about digitalizing curricula and produce content for remote learning via community radio, align different sets of partners each time. We heard some of these examples already from Prime Minister of Samoa, for instance, on the partnership, very effective with Vodafone to offer free access to education platforms to some 60,000 learners. And I'm sure Minister Mamadou Talla from Senegal will provide further insight into how the model has served teachers and students in a short space of time in his country. And there are many exciting initiatives, of course, I cannot mention now here, but once again, it's about stressing a point. They are conducted with a family of partners from different contexts, never explored as a new partnership before, from luxury fashion brands to tech companies and multilaterals, of course, to equip 1 million youth with digital skills, to promote early reading in maternal language, or to provide teachers with ICT in education skills, just to give you some example. And I want to stress a last point, which is about 2 points, definitely. One is about the importance of the gender flagship. The gender flagship unites coalition members around a claim which is building back equal. Through practical guides for policymakers, a campaign to keep girls in the picture, to not leave girls behind once again, mentoring programs like Techno Innovation to help girls learn how to build with technology. And finally, the monitoring, knowledge, and advocacy pillar. This is about very much the importance of data. This is about very much the importance of building on good data and better data, knowledge and awareness of what's happening. And it's about advocacy, which is the real link between what we're discussing today about policy and political commitment, which is a bit the next mile to be done. And this last point is about providing policy tools and answers to situations that have never been experienced before at such a scale. The coalition has produced already toolkits informed by in-country dialogues, joint surveys to monitor the education response, and advocacy campaigns. Well, to summarize and conclude, let me say that this new coalition is about really offering an innovative framework for intervention, for leveraging resources that are not normally available, and from bringing unconventional partners together and creating a genuine movement to transform education. I hope and I think that it's time to capitalize on that, and it's time really to bring out the importance of these agile, collaborative, entrepreneurial mindsets, which can really bring some new assets to the work we are doing also within the UN system. We know there is no return definitely to normal in education, as in many other sectors. Schools today remain closed in over 50 countries. Millions of students are at risk of dropping out or falling behind. And then our society will pay for sure a high price for this. If we don't advocate, if we don't act, if we don't think and move together differently. And this is what we are trying to do, that we have to try over the last 6 months. And I thank really from the bottom of my heart, every single member for joining this adventure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Giannini, for this insight. It's very important to know what actions have been taken, what are the interventions that have been leveraged, and the partnership that you kindly shared with us. My colleagues will put in the chat in the Q&A the link to the report, the progress report of the coalition that provides much more details regarding the actions that have been undertaken. Buenos días, Ministro.
Good morning, Minister of Education of Peru, Mr. Martín Benavides Abanto. Yes, good afternoon.
Partnership has been a key component of how you have been responding in Peru to the COVID-19 crisis in the education sector. Can you give us some more insights into how you leveraged national and international stakeholders?
Perfecto.
First of all, greetings to all participants, and in particular, I'm speaking in Spanish. Thank you. And particularly to the organizers of this event, Stefania Giannini, and all of the collaborators, the international
Cette
authorities that are
conversation
present.
va être enregistrée.
We have benefited greatly from this cooperation ever since the
L'enregistrement a été interrompu.
And we had to decide, when we had to decide to close schools, we convened the partners roundtable, and we learned from this roundtable different ways in which we could move forward in order to secure education in remote areas. It's important to recall that in March 2020, Peru did not have an education system that was prepared for remote learning. The internet coverage is very low. 3 in 10 families have internet access. So we had to proceed with a great mobilization of many different partners to mobilize resources and design this remote learning, and the way in which we could proceed not only using internet, but also television, which was one of our main allies, as well as radio, in order to reach rural areas of the country. And in this context, we had a lot of contact with UNESCO and other international organizations. We took part in international minister meetings in which we learned a lot about what was happening in other countries, and thanks to which we learned about this coalition for education, and we put forward the proposal to launch a national chapter of this coalition. And from then on, we have joined this coalition and collaborated to talk about the ideas and strategies that are being carried out in other countries. The coalition has allowed us to access all of this information more directly, and we have launched a campaign together, the National Campaign for Return to School. We are addressing the issue of the disruption of studies. So we've launched this national program to prevent the disruption of study. We've also launched a campaign to allow better articulation for students in Quito in secondary school. And we've also received, or we're also providing social and emotional support for teachers. Now, what is ahead of us now in terms of challenges is what we are doing now to design a strategy for returning to school in Peru. And we consider this to be particularly urgent in our country. And the coalition has been helping us to design this strategy by providing a great deal of information, which has been very useful for us in our decision making.
Very important, of course, the meeting we had with your team, and it was Saturday afternoon, and we had more than 50 directors joining that meeting. It was really impressive how committed are your team. What new expectation do you have from the Global Education Coalition going forward?
Sí, la principal es
the main expectation is to serve as support to us when it comes to return to school in Peru. There's a lot of fear around that. We know that we're still in a difficult health situation, but we have to prepare our society, we have to prepare everyone for the decisions. We also have to prepare the community of educators for the moment in which we will reopen our schools. So they're helping us with communication strategies. The coalition is with pedagogical strategies, which will have to mean that the Peruvian educational system is going to have to show a lot of flexibility in 2021. We're gathering a lot of ideas from the coalition, and those are our main expectations for them to help us and support us to convince Peruvian society, and particularly the educational community, that it's important to go back to school. I mean, physical presence in schools.
To serve and to support you, and we will be actively mobilizing the coalition to respond to your expectation. Muchas gracias. Let me now move to Ms. Magdalena Breyer Lopez Guerrero, Directora General Pro Futuro. Magdalena, you are very actively engaged in the coalition in different countries. Of course, educators are key in ensuring quality and inclusive continuity of learning. Maybe you can share with us some of the challenges you have seen and action that you have taken as part of the coalition and through the Pro Futuro, please.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon. While students are the direct beneficiaries of our program, the focus of Pro Futuro is teachers as the main agents of change and transformation through education of their schools and communities. Teachers trigger the learning process and play a vital role in achieving a significant change in the quality of education. In this regard, Pro Futuro focuses on providing them with training, assistance, and continuous support. Taking advantage of digital transformation and educational innovation, Pro Futuro provides teachers with professional development and tools to help them reinforce their teaching practice, their capacity to manage the classroom, and their digital skills. This helps them to integrate technology and collaborative work in the classroom. This is one of the 5 pillars of our program, which include as well digital platform and equipment supply, technical and pedagogical support, community awareness, and a monitoring and evaluation system. During the COVID crisis, Pro Futuro opened its digital learning platform to teachers and students across the world so they could continue learning from home. The platform offers both educational resources and more than 160 online training courses for teachers. We also made available our online class management tool to teachers already part of the Pro Futuro program so that they could continue working from home. The tool allows teachers to prepare their classes anytime, anywhere, as long as they have an internet connection. The tool is designed to facilitate the review of resources, didactic planning, and the creation of classes. In this way, the teacher could use the time of COVID to later incorporate their classes to the school server, facilitating their work integration of digital resources and tools to the learning sequences. Among other projects and initiatives that we have carried out during these last months, let me mention Aula Digital en Casa, an English digital classroom at home deployed in Peru. We have provided a digital platform for students and teachers to guarantee the continuity of education. We have digitalized the materials of the Learning at Home program of the Ministry of Education, added complementary activities to contribute to the fulfillment of the lessons goals, and we have developed tools to facilitate the communication between teachers and students. By mid-September, 100,000 children had already been impacted directly with this project. The challenge for teachers in preparing their classes has increased in recent times, and especially during the COVID crisis. Some of the reasons are very little time to prepare lessons, be limited by the textbook, being frequently isolated, feeling overwhelmed by new difficult tools, finding great difficulty adjusting publishers' content or mixing your own content with that already published, There are lots of contents available online, but at the same time, very fragmented, created for a specific purpose or time, not easily reusable, not organized in a didactic sequence, or not always easily accessible or usable. This is why we created that platform Profuturo Resources that is now open for free and that offers ready-to-use content and educational methodologies to support a better and more inclusive digital education. Of course, connectivity is a challenge, but we have found a way to overcome that difficulty, even in times of COVID. Let me finish by giving you a concrete example. In 2020, this year, we launched, together with several members of the Teach for All network, a teacher development project in 3 African countries, Nigeria, Liberia, and Tanzania. As schools close in all these countries, we use all possible tools to keep on training teachers. Radio lessons, WhatsApps, forums, and even printed materials being distributed door to door. So far, we have trained more than 6,000 teachers in the middle of the pandemic, and we will continue with the training. Our plan is to reach 15,000 teachers in these 3 countries by the end of the year. Thank you.
Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you. Very clear about. So maybe a very brief question as a follow-up. Technology appears to be one of the major challenges, and it was mentioned by the president of Ethiopia, by different speakers. How the coalition can advance the agenda and address this challenge from your perspective? Very briefly, please.
Yeah, access to technology and to connectivity is a challenge in many parts of the world. No? We implement our program in extremely vulnerable areas with high risk of exclusion, where the digital gap is already increasing the already existing educational gap. We live in a digital society in which both teachers and students need to develop 21st century skills to succeed, or at least survive, in today's and tomorrow's labor market and society. But in the meanwhile, and especially during this huge emergency we are living in, we can't leave behind those that don't have access to technology or an internet connection. We at Profuturo have reinvented ourselves to reach the unconnected. The Global Education Coalition is a great example of quick response to a crisis, and it has amplified the individual efforts and resources. There are still a lot of potential collaborations under definition that will hopefully go beyond the crisis situation. We need to work together, governments, multilateral institutions, corporations, and civil society, to overcome the current educational crisis and change the future of education so that no one is left behind.
Thank you, Magdalena. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dear colleagues, I know that we are having quite important and interesting questions. Please keep sharing your perspective, questions, and also resources that you may want to share with us. My colleagues are looking at the Q&A part of the meeting, and would be happy to look at some of those questions that are coming. Excellence, Monsieur le Ministre Mamadou Talla.
Mr. Mamadou Talla, good afternoon, and thank you for being with us. We are honored by your presence, and we would like to hear from you. Well, we know that Senegal was very successful in ensuring the continuity of learning in Africa. Senegal is seen as an example. Can you give us an idea as to what worked well and what support was provided by the coalition to you? Please turn your microphone off, sir. On. Please turn your microphone on, sir. Very well. Thank you. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to take part in this extremely important meeting, very important for us, in a time of a pandemic that has completely caused upheaval in the educational system the world over. In Senegal, we tried to face this pandemic from the very beginning by creating some measures to respond to that threat. First of all of the players in the education system had to be with us, be they the financial partners, the social partners, parents of pupils. We had to get them all on board as soon as the schools were closed. and we had to set up a measure and one system, which is a diversified measure that can be adapted to specific realities. Since it was the result of a very great consultation that all of the stakeholders were involved, we were able to set up 3 different actions. The first one is what we call passive, the second one is active, and the third is what we call interactive. Now let's look at the passive measure. We had to understand that we had to move toward digital education even before the pandemic. The resources were there, but for there to be equity in the use of them, and for there to be a transfer from the capital to the most far-flung regions, we said that to learn at school, we had to set up photocopying systems to produce teaching material from that lowest to the highest level. That is for the first year to the end of high school. And that was validated by the educational authorities. And that teaching material was distributed all the way down to the local level. Now, of course, the production of such teaching material wasn't easy. Fortunately, we had the teaching material which was in stock. The teachers were fully involved too. Therefore, we produced lots of courses at the regional and sub-regional levels. The second part that we call active. Well, first of all, the first part concerned all pupils, whatever gender, wherever they were, whether they be in Dakar or in the most far-flung regions, whether they be prosperous or not. These were documents that were validated by the educational authorities, and the teachers were actively involved, which made it possible to serve the entire country. Secondly, that doesn't concern all students, is what we call the active system. That is, we could provide education through what we call an educational canal. That's a television channel with TNT that is accessible in several regions of Senegal, where teachers dispense courses, intervene, explain things, correct, and they do that in partnership with several other television channels. But alongside that television channel, we have another network, community networks that provide courses validated by the educational authorities. That way we were able to reach a great number of young people and pupils and parents and civil society who used that channel and the community networks. And that last, which we call interactive, that means digital technology. It's the solutions for tomorrow. Well, we have a great base that has all of the digital teaching resources, courses, additional material, exercises from the lowest level up. And the teachers also gave classes through WhatsApp and other means. But all of this made it possible for us to bring together the education channel, Canal d'Education, the community networks, private televisions, and the other digital networks through different websites and through Canal d'Education. And since we know that we had to go ahead, we had to make progress, we have to look at remote education tomorrow. The post-COVID world's not going to be the same as the pre-COVID world. And we set up a new project called Prome. That's for remote learning. It was set up by the Education Ministry. So that system, as soon as it was set up, made it possible, first of all, to make it for all the 531,000 students to resume their courses. They resumed them in conditions that respected our health protocol and with no more than 5 pupils per class. This is the people at the different levels, the very important school years for them where they had national exams. This year we have achieved very important results when it comes to these examinations. So the other pupils, the other students that weren't in those examination years used the digital technology networks and Canal Education. So we were able to see that the system worked. It was accepted. The results were good. And the tests were not made any easier than in previous years. So therefore, we felt that we had to roll out digital technology, but we don't have connectivity everywhere. So we have, and the result is that we had to reduce the number of pupils, and they had fewer pupils in the examination classes. The pupils and the teachers were more at ease. So we have to go in that direction. Now, along with home schooling, we also looked at how we could help the student. The student has to be helped by his parents, in digital technology. When the student must learn, the family must accept helping him or her out. And in our fight against this pandemic in Senegal, we have a lot more girls than boys in our educational system. Well, human capital is essential for us. And even in the exam results, it's the girls who came in first. So we really have to say that this coalition will make it possible for us to exchange good practice, to discuss amongst ourselves, to raise the problems that we've faced. First of all, when it comes to connectivity, and secondly, the equipment in terms of smartphones and computers for the teachers or for the students. In terms of educational resources, the educational community mobilized and produced enough courses under the supervision of the General Inspectorate for Education and Training. So thank you. And I think that is why our system proved a success. We've just concluded that although we'll have 1 month of holidays, and in November, we're going to resume, not just for the pupils who were in examination level classes, but with 3 odd million pupils. All of those are in the educational system. Thank you very much for those results. We've seen what you call the passive, the active, and the interactive levels. Those are all meaningful words to us. Mr. Minister, you have, within the panel, you have Madam Giannini, Magdalena, Anthony, who are important players in the coalition. What more are you expecting from the coalition in the coming weeks or months, since you are going to face a challenge when you reopen your schools? Thank you very much. We're expecting a lot from the coalition, which has already done a lot. Just the fact that we can meet is already important. They also worked with other agencies. The World Partnership for Education also takes part in this. So what I expect of the coalition is to facilitate connectivity in Senegal. How can they help the students and the teachers be better equipped with tools whereby they can use the educational materials we've set up? We don't have problems with teacher training. We don't have problems producing documents that correspond to our official curricula. But where we do have problems, well, first of all, with equity between the different geographies of the country and between genders, and how we can make sure that all students can resume education in good conditions, especially with proper connections and with the proper equipment. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you for your passion and for your commitment. We, of course, are here to work with you in order to help you achieve your noble goals of leaving no one aside.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
This very important message from the Minister of Education of Senegal, the achievement, but also the challenges. Of course, Microsoft has been, since the beginning, a main player in the Global Education Coalition. the shift to online learning created needs in terms of deploying infrastructure, the developing resources, enrolling learners, training teachers. How do you see Microsoft contribution in this context, and what are the challenges and what are the strategies that you think are the most appropriate in this context?
Well, thank you for that. And certainly I'd like to congratulate and thank the Minister from Senegal for his leadership. We've been working very closely to support remote and blended learning in Senegal. And Senegal is now one of the largest platform users for Microsoft technology in the region. We have been proud to be part of the coalition because we recognize the important role technology is playing in this current response to COVID-19. We certainly have to do it with the approach to security and privacy and accessibility to make sure powerful tools are in the hands of educators. But we can't forget that the largest part of this transition is a people transition. And our commitment has been very focused on helping get leaders to understand the ways in which they can expand learning, embrace a wide variety of synchronous and asynchronous modalities, and bring the right mindset to their learners, parents, and educators throughout this transition. We've also been investing in readiness to support teachers who are not only heroes throughout this response, but have lifted their value in society. One of the great takeaways from this reaction to COVID has been, while technology has risen in the use of tools throughout education, our respect and value for the role teachers play is growing around the world. And Microsoft has been committed to countries around the world as part of our mission to help enable every student to achieve more. We've been working in Senegal and Cabo Verde, and as mentioned, helping support the response in Lebanon with over 500,000 students using Microsoft Office 365 and Teams. We've also been working as part of the Coalition's Global Skills Academy to make sure tools like available tools to help students get skills for future jobs are available through the course catalog from Microsoft Learn, which provides technical skilling for students to get job ready and prepare and grow the future workforce. And one other thing that we need to recognize is the importance of data. And we're working as part of UNESCO's Institute of Statistics to support 10 ministries to get insight of the learner progression throughout this response to COVID. And as we have remote learning taking place in our classrooms, the absolute opportunity to use data to more effectively understand how we can serve the needs of learners and educators is something that we have to respond with.
Thank you, Anthony. There are still major challenges ahead, unfortunately.
Sure.
Most of the countries are reopening their education system. As Madame Giannini referred to the statistics, we still have 50 countries that didn't open. Many countries are organizing the delivery through hybrid learning, through remote learning. The coalition has done a lot, but how we can do better, more going forward to address the challenges?
Yeah, certainly. We certainly recognize there are many, many challenges, and many of the challenges that existed before have just intensified. Certainly equity and access, which was certainly a problem before COVID, has become an even greater challenge with the reliance on technology. One of the things I think as part of the coalition, we've recognized the three core phases: a response, recover, and certainly a reimagine phase of this transition. We're still in many parts of the world in response phase, where we're still getting the foundation to adequately and safely provide effective remote learning solutions to schools and to students. As part of the recover stage, many institutions are now starting to think much more broadly about how they can shift assessment, curriculum design, create much more blended and dynamic learning engagement for learners, whether online or offline. But as part of Reimagine, we have to recognize the opportunity to elevate and accelerate the transformation with the opportunity that this new shift is providing. We can extend the boundaries of the classroom to provide more efficient, scalable reach to students who didn't have access to quality education. As said previously, we have to redouble our efforts to invest in education, to invest in the future of countries, to create learners who are building skills for the future. Now, certainly one of the challenges we faced is the dynamics of how do we effectively scale, how do we effectively transition to the core remote learning environments? We've taken a lot of feedback from educators around the world to enhance the effectiveness of our technology, to and strengthen the availability of cloud technologies, to provide robust connection to students and learners, and to work with third-party providers to integrate curriculum, integrate systems to improve the efficiency and ease of use for educators. There's still a lot of work to be done, but one of the things about this, we have to learn from each other every day. As part of the coalition, we have an opportunity to listen, learn from great leaders around the world at how we can effectively respond. And the technology part of the response will be responding quickly and innovating regularly. The thing that we can't forget is the need to strengthen and embolden our view of how we can expand the opportunity for education and build a faster and more transformative shift in our classrooms and beyond during this time.
Thank you, Anthony. His Excellency the Minister was listening to us, and he's waiting that we help on the connectivity and on reaching out. And we are committed, of course, and we are working together to have a workshop in October in Senegal to advance this agenda of connectivity. And Monsieur le Ministre, nous sommes sur la promesse.
We'll support, along with our Microsoft colleagues, this workshop. Now, I won't let you leave just yet, Minister, before asking you a question from the Q&A box. I think it's very interesting. We haven't addressed it yet. That is the role of parents and the support that we can provide to parents in this context. What have you done to support parents in supporting their children and to ensure equity, as you highlighted? A very brief answer, please, before we have to go. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, very well. Earlier, I was saying that as soon as we closed schools, we set up a system which allowed us to have all stakeholders discussing around the school system. And this is what gave birth to the learning at home system. We have trade unions and civil society, but also parents of students. Our learning at home system could only be accepted if at the parental level there was a particular form of support. So from the beginning, we have been supporting children and students in learning and looking into how to do this on a family level. The entire family has to be able to accept that the student needs to learn. So the parents are the core of this. And if the parents or if the students don't have the tools available, then parents have to be able to lend them these tools. So everything that we're doing at the moment involves parents. We're saying, you are the parents, because we know that there is a new normal now. Face-to-face education is, of course, a good thing, but we will be looking at blended forms of education in the future. And for home learning, parents will have to play a major role. So we're supporting them in this. And especially, there's an issue regarding connectivity within the country. So that's another major issue to address. Thank you very much. That was very clear.
Thank you very much. We are moving to the last panelist in our panel today, and I'm happy to welcome Mr. Fabrizio Hochschild, Special Advisor to the Secretary General and Under Secretary General on the commemoration of the United Nations 75th anniversary and response. So, Mr. Fabrizio, the Secretary General policy brief on education during the COVID-19 and beyond highlighted key challenges and recommendations. How important is the global coalition for education in this agenda, and how to act together to narrow the digital divide in education? Please, the floor is yours.
I think the global coalition is absolutely critical in making up for lost ground. The Secretary General has referred to this as the greatest crisis in education ever. I don't think there's been any other moment in history where 94% of learners across the world have had their education disrupted. And of course, the effect of that is generational. It's not punctual. It will have very long-lasting consequences for those who are impacted. But I think we also have to acknowledge that it doesn't impact all equally. I think the vast majority will lose in the quality of their education by being compelled to switch to online or phone education. But UNICEF estimates that there's a third of all learners who won't even have that ability. So it's not a question of losing out or having lesser quality education. It's a question of having none at all. And that points to the importance of the digital divide. If 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, not having connectivity was foregoing a luxury, in this pandemic, not having connectivity means foregoing access to the most basic services, means foregoing the fulfillment of basic rights to health, rights to education. So I think the only way that this can be overcome is by doing our utmost to address with much greater urgency than we've done to date, addressing the digital divide. And there are a number of large-scale initiatives and more focused initiatives in that regard. That UNICEF is working with the International Telecommunications Union on a so-called GIGA initiative, which aims to connect every school across the world to the internet, and they're raising significant amounts of public and private investment to that end. But we will need greatly scaled up multi-stakeholder efforts, and it's very good that Microsoft are with us, that you have government and private sector reps, because that's what it will take. But there's no question in overcoming the digital divide, we have to focus most on those who are most vulnerable and those who are left further behind. And that is children in developing countries. And unless we use this opportunity of COVID, post-COVID, rebuilding and building back better to address their needs, we will lose out on the SDGs, and in particular the SDGs related to equality and related to education. So I think the major challenge before us is to combine education with technology, with digital technologies, and to bring together the multi-stakeholder approaches through the global coalition to hugely step up efforts jointly to make up for the very important ground we've lost through COVID.
Thank you very much. This is a very important point that you are highlighting, and obviously the digital gap is one of the major challenges, and Minister Mamadou Talla was referring to that as well in different also interventions. Dear colleagues, I wish to thank all the panelists for sharing their views, knowledge, and perspective with us today. The discussion truly helped us shed light on multidimensional impact of the COVID crisis on education from different standpoints, from public, private, UN organization as well, philanthropy. The responses have provided us very insightful overview of policies, measures, and steps, and the importance of partnership and multi-actors engagement that could significantly help to tackle the effects of the pandemic moving forward. We have heard some key elements, some key directions on connectivity and technology, on gender challenges, on teachers and learners, and we have also highlighted the contribution that coalitions partnership can bring into the discussion. Thank you very much to all the panelists, and we'll be now moving to the last segment of our meeting today. It was important that, of course, we hear from head of states, that we hear from eminent experts and leaders and thought leaders, but it's important also that we hear from the field, that we hear the voice of actors. And for this, I'm very pleased to have a last segment and last panel in our discussion this afternoon. We'll hear from Ms. Antonia Bain, teacher from the Bahamas. We'll hear from Aurora Richo, a youth participant. And we also hear from Mr. Chai Rishev from the university. So without the delay, let me move to Ms. Antonia Bain. Good morning, good afternoon to you, Antonia. Thank you for joining us. Antonia, you have been participating in a teacher training recently as part of the Global Education Coalition work in the Caribbean. Can you share with us what are the insight that you are having, your experience as of now, and maybe it will be helpful to know how this training is helpful in your particular context. Please, Antonia.
Good day, everyone. So as a participant in this professional development course, I really enjoyed the collaborating and conversing that we had amongst the participants in the discussion forum. It provided, for a lot of opportunities for us to not only share, but also relate our context to our personal experience. And sometimes it also provided you as the reader the opportunity to see the content in a different light. So sometimes you would go, that's interesting, or I really didn't think about it that way. So you really learned a lot from this professional development course. It provided you with the sharing, the avenue to share strategies with your colleagues and hear about activities that they would have been engaging in their academic environment. And so if something was interesting to you, you could make note of it and use it in the future. In regards to the program, we are actually completing, on the end of completing the program, we had numerous worksheets, numerous quizzes, numerous reading activities that we needed to do. But I think the most beneficial aspect of this program for me in regards to my area as an elementary teacher is the fact that it opened up my eyes. Sometimes we really underestimate the realities of a situation. And so for me, technology was very easy, but dealing with this course and really understanding how to create a course for online learners, it really opened up my eyes to some other variables and factors that we have to take into consideration. It's not just about the teacher, and it's not just about having the content available in the different formats, but it's also about ensuring that our course is accessible and usable to all of our learners.
Thank you, thank you. Maybe a second question, Antonia, to you is, we have the Global Education Coalition partners in this meeting. We have heard from some of them. What would be your expectation? What should we do to better reinforce the pedagogical skills, the technology skills of the teachers going forward? What action we have to take?
Well, I think you guys would have started off well with providing that particular course and then allowing us to go back and share, but continued professional development, I think, is going to be paramount in this aspect, because we're all going into a new norm. This is something that is not familiar to most of us. So we need that training where teachers can get crash courses in ways maybe they can teach remotely, or maybe how to use useful online tools, how to support their classes, how to exchange information. And then I heard another panelist speak about building these professional learning communities. And I think that is so important, where we can create this culture of sharing and supporting one another, because a challenge that you may have had in your particular country, we may have that same challenge in our country. And if you would have already addressed that, then the situations or the actions that you would have utilized could also assist us when we experience that same challenge. So I think continuous professional development, building those PLCs, professional learning communities, and also one last point, maybe we need to also rethink the way in which we execute our educational platform. I know within the Bahamas, our elementary education is strictly face-to-face, but maybe we need to think about now incorporating some sort of online aspect into our educational platform, or maybe some more asynchronous and synchronous activities in our platform. So if we do have another future crisis like this, we have already had some experience and the teachers know how to just move forward.
Thank you, Antonia. Thank you. Of course, we have to build the resilience and be ready, unfortunately, for future crises. But I do like the classroom behind you, so it's very nice, and we could visit that. Thank you very much, Antonia. Aurora, buenos dias. Thank you for joining us, Aurora.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Can you tell us how have you been continuing learning while the schools were closed? What's your experience?
Ok, pues creo que en general las clases.
In general, the physical classes, closing some of the physical classes and some of the other activities began in March, and then we took up virtual learning. In most of the cases, they were by Zoom, but we weren't really prepared for the pandemic. The schools were rather disorganized. We couldn't even have a set classroom times, so we were rather unorganized. We didn't have any set working methods. People were confused. But after coming back to classrooms in August and September, during that period, the teachers, at least in the private schools that I'm aware of, were prepared to teach classes virtually. I mean, so they had some previous training in order to teach by classroom or different applications. Several times where I met with people to study, we found it easier to do that face to face. Everything was much more difficult with virtual learning. We had to really adapt to that. But we found different ways of adapting. In public schools that other people that I've spoken with were familiar with, often the teachers weren't prepared. Even in schools for which they should be prepared, they're teachers who weren't able to use electronic technology. So it was rather difficult in those cases.
Aurora, one of the challenge that we have seen is, of course, the digital gap and digital skills gap. You have recently participated in this training together with many other girls around the world on these Technovations at your lab to develop digital skills. Can you tell us a bit what did you learn and how this will help you in solving problems in your community and how you will engage with those skills?
Pues creo que.
I think that, well, it was an honor to participate in that program. It was very good. It was of great interest to me. What I really liked was the participation of the mentors, of the teachers who were teaching us. Their participation was rather good. It was seen as very good for the students, the way they explained things. I think what I liked most was artificial intelligence and its use. We learned how to program some things in order to solve certain common problems, that sort of thing that taught us how to use AI to solve the sorts of problems we had in the community. We could choose the problems that we encountered most in the places where we were living. In my case, I identified unemployment, at least in Mexico. There's a lot of unemployment because of COVID. So we didn't have the same opportunities for work as we did before.
We were thinking that artificial intelligence is in the past, but it is part of today. And obviously, we look for that young people like you will master, particularly girls that can engage with this technology and with other technologies that are coming. Muchas gracias, Aurora.
So thank you.
Let me move to the last speaker in this panel, President Shay Reshaf. Welcome to you. Welcome to the University of People. President, the situation today is quite terrible. And according to our data, there are around 7 million higher education students that are at risk of dropping out. And we know very well that this will affect the most marginalized. So what's your university is doing in this context? How to address this challenge from your perspective?
So these 7 million students are at risk either because they lost their jobs and they cannot pay for higher education, or the recession forced governments to cut budgets and universities cannot support those who need financial assistance. Saying that, there is a solution for those students, and it is online learning. The pandemic is forcing universities to move to what they call the new world of online. But online learning is not new. It exists for over 20 years. It is clear that online learning is the solution if it is done correctly. Online learning is not as simple as just putting lectures on Zoom. It requires an entirely different pedagogy. It's knowing how to build interaction and collaborative learning. It needs a suitable learning management system, training the instructors, engaging lesson plans. And this is exactly what University of the People is doing for the past 11 years. University of the People is the first non-profit, tuition-free, accredited online university. We have doubled our enrollment since 2014, and currently we have 44,000 students coming from over 200 countries and territories. When done correctly, many students prefer online learning because it's flexible. They can study anywhere and anytime. They can meet students from around the world and gain important skills for the 21st century. Students learn how to work collaboratively, give and receive feedback, and build remote teams. University of the People's model must be replicated to solve the crisis of higher education. It's clear that higher education cannot stay as it was. Universities must change how they operate if they want to survive. They need to dramatically change their cost structure, move to online learning, and pass this saving on to their students. For higher education to survive, it has to be accessible and affordable to all. This pandemic actually holds an opportunity for a better higher education, not only to help the 7 million at risk, but also for the 100 million students who otherwise have no hope for reaching higher education.
Thank you so much. Leaving no one behind is a very important message that we are taking. Madame Giannini, I give you the floor for the closing remarks. We are looking forward for final points from your side. And I would like to thank, first of all, the panel that joined us, Antonia, Aurora, and Mr. Shay. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Stefania, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Boren. We are on time, so just really 1 minute to say. First, I hope you've been inspired by this great discussion as I am. We heard from heads of state, ministers, private players, beneficiaries, concrete actors on the ground. And I like to join Boren to thank each coalition partner and each member of this discussion today in this meeting for your enthusiasm, your commitment, ideas, and the sense of the spirit of partnership I mentioned before in action. We could see that. Then there is another issue. Just listening to this conversation between all of you, I remember a claim which is it takes a village to educate a child. And it's what we are a bit looking at today. In the face of a crisis, it takes an extended global network village to educate a child and to leave no one behind. And I'm really very much encouraged by the spirit, the ethos of cooperation that has connected us over the past 7 months, starting, of course, with all our UN sister agencies, multilateral partners, by the new alliance created by the campaign launched. Let me recall another important appointment we have in a few weeks. On the 22nd October, UNESCO will be calling on world leaders to commit to education as a recovery priority during a special virtual global education meeting. This is very much about putting together around the table at the highest level global leadership on education. But we also heard just from Aurora, Antonia, very concrete and fresh examples and experience. And I think that we need everyone's talent and resources to keep education at the center, to address the magnitude of challenges that we recall today, and to learn together and find solutions that will support every country and every children to reopen schools safely and to deliver quality education for all. So please continue to support the coalition, and we say in my language once again, Avanti.
Avanti, thank you very much, and thank you to all the participants. Stay well, stay tuned to the Global Education Coalition, to UNESCO. Merci, muchas gracias, au revoir.